what are the biggest problems the Chinese economy is facing right now in the wake of the tariffs?
Well, if you're not exporting, then, as I said, you're not earning the foreign exchange, the convertible currency that you need to do things like buy Australian iron ore to make steel to make your navy. If you want to buy overseas technology, you have to pay in dollars. If you want a Belt and Road Initiative, you pay in dollars. If you want to buy off an Ivy League professor, they only take dollars. So you need all this. And the Chinese don't have half of the foreign exchange, the convertible currency, that they need to handle all of their existing dollar obligations. That's a problem. Also, factories start to close, people lose their jobs. That's a problem. And keep in mind that China, despite what you hear about them having moved hundreds of millions of people out of poverty, really by virtue of not starving and killing them, there's still 600 million people in China who live on $5 a day, and that's by their own admission. Now, that is a sort of an unstable situation. So when people are stressed, even a sort of a ruthless dictatorship, police state, has trouble keeping a lid on things. And you saw that with the COVID lockdowns in China, where despite all of the repressive measures that regime has, they couldn't keep a lid on everything. And that is something that has got to worry them. And then really the granddaddy of them all is the wealth which China's top leadership has amassed. And that is the thing that really scares them. And we're talking, say, billions of dollars with individuals, including Xi Jinping and the top guys, and their families that have immense wealth, a lot of it overseas. They have businesses overseas, real estate. They have relatives with green cards establishing bolt holes. Now tell this to the 600 million people living on $5 a day that don't worry about it. This is the thing that scares them, because you cannot blame that corruption on foreigners. Like they say, everything is a foreign plot to humiliate China, to contain China. But when it comes to the theft, the trillions of dollars that these people have stolen, and much of it moved overseas, well, that is something they've done themselves, and you can't blame that on foreigners. And having that exposed is one thing that really scares them. So you combine all of this, and you can see that the thinking is they're maybe not as confident as the statements from China let on.
Well, the U.S. government must know about this level of corruption within the Chinese Communist Party, especially if there's overseas investments. Why don't you hear the U.S. government or other governments around the world pressing that issue, talking about it, making it known they're corrupt?
Well, because the Chinese Communist Party leadership wouldn't like it. You know, I can't think of any other reason. You figure out that that a couple of years ago, Congress passed a law, and it was actually Marco Rubio who pushed it, requiring the intelligence community and the State Department to put together a report on the foreign holdings, the corrupt and wealth, the unexplained wealth that these people have. And the report was about a year and a half late. And it finally came out a few weeks ago, and it consisted of 4 pages. And of those, maybe a page and a half were even remotely interesting. And this is the intelligence community and the State Department telling the administration really to go take a hike. And there's really nothing in there.
Can they do that? Why don't they get fired?
Well, it used to be nobody got fired, but I don't know why they do it. But to make it even better, we're paying about $100 billion a year for our intelligence community. They could figure this out. And keep in mind that in 2012 or so, New York Times and Bloomberg actually put together a series of articles on the wealth of the Chinese Communist Party's top leadership, including Xi Jinping's family. And in all the years that I have seen this, I've never seen this followed China. I've never seen the Chinese leadership respond so forcefully to anything. And this scared them. And they put so much pressure on Bloomberg and the New York Times that Bloomberg rolled over immediately. New York Times took a little longer to roll over. But more recently, when this bill that Marco Rubio was pushing and eventually did get passed, the Chinese embassy in Washington was calling around to all their friends, to everybody, saying, don't issue this report. And that tells you something about how much it scares them, because as I said, you can't blame it on anyone else. And they've got no excuse for that. And one understands the idea of like pitchfork and mobs coming out saying, I get $5 a day or less. You've got this. You can, try getting away from that. Try explaining it.
I think one of the biggest challenges I've seen with getting the American public on board with this conflict we have with China is that many people don't recognize, essentially, we're already at war. It just isn't a kinetic war yet, and that might come. And so when you're talking about the trade war, tariffs, you see a lot of people like, I don't want to spend more for any number of things. And, many Americans are living paycheck to paycheck, but without the understanding the context of like paying a little more now versus kinetic war. Like this narrative needs to get out there more. What can be done to get the American people to kind of be more aware that we are a nation at war?
Mm-hmm. Well, who's got the bully pulpit? Who has the microphone? Ultimately, it's the top leadership in the U.S. Either in the White House or on Capitol Hill. These people have got to be making the case and speaking clearly to the Americans. And you had a good chance to do this, for example, a year and a half ago, a couple of years when the spy balloon came over America. And many Americans looked up there and said, what's the deal here? What is it about China? And instinctively, they knew this was a problem. What did the Biden administration do? They tried to suppress it. And if it wasn't for some guy in Billings, Montana, looking up and taking a picture, they would have ignored the whole thing, pretended it didn't exist. After the balloon was shot down over the Atlantic Ocean, after it had completed its mission, you'll notice that no report was ever given about what was in that balloon. A bunch of the guts was American technology. And even by their own admission, it's come out recently. The National Security Advisor, Secretary of State, they were profoundly concerned at the effect this would have on our relationship.
Well, because Blinken was about to go to China, too. So they were trying to keep it quiet so he could still go.
Very much. And I think he wanted to get his mileage plus points for that trip. But so somebody's got to say this. We actually have to explain the danger and the fact that to the Chinese communists, they're at war with us, and they have been for a long time. But if we pretend they're not, well, they've got the advantage, and they're able to keep attacking while we're not defending ourselves. And as for things costing a little extra, well, you can refer to that as really the price of freedom. That's the price you pay not to be dominated by the Chinese Communist Party. And, plus, it's, I could handle if everyday low prices at Walmart go up a little bit, I'll be okay. I think most people will. And you consider, the cost of this war that we're facing. You look at the damage done, as we've talked about a lot, by fentanyl. 70,000 dead Americans a year. What are the financial costs of that? We're already paying an immense price by not realizing we are at war. And as you said, Chris, if a war starts, the checkbook comes out, and you fill out whatever number that is. So if you think we're spending a lot as it is now, we will be borrowing in the trillions if we even, and that assumes we win.
Thank you for watching this clip. There's a lot more, including what the U.S. and other countries can actually do about all this. So I invite you to watch the full hour-long interview by going to our website, ChinaUncensored.tv. The link is below.